Hey guys, welcome to another live show, another live She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and getting into the chat, letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. Unfortunately, I was hoping that we'd get through the Christmas period, or at least Christmas Day. I don't know, because it would have been Boxing Day anyway, but I was hoping that wouldn't have to come on here and have this conversation, because I kind of had a feeling in my gut that this was going to be the case, just because it looked like a serious injury. But Bukayo Saka, it has been confirmed by Mikel Arteta, has torn his hamstring, and the time period is weeks, Mikel says, and he's worried about it. He's saying, and it's probably going to be around 8 weeks at minimum for a grade 2 hamstring injury. And so the inevitability that I feel like a lot of us knew was coming has come, where our best and most important player is now going to be out for a sustained period of time. We don't know what this feels like. Over the last 4 seasons, he's been available almost every single game. He plays through injuries all the time. He's always available for England. He just got his 250th appearance for Arsenal, and boom, just like that, he is out for a significant amount of time. So you could actually say that we probably are lucky that it's coming way down the line rather than early on, because a lot of young players cannot withstand the amount of playing time that Saka has had over the last 4 years. So in some ways, I feel like we're lucky, and in other ways, I feel like we are incredibly unlucky, because the fixtures that are coming up, you would want your best and most important player to be available. And if there's one problem area that Arsenal definitely have, it's in terms of quality, it's definitely up front. It's one of those things where, when it rains, it pours. We get multiple injuries in the same position almost every season. That first season that we challenged, we got within hours, or even in the same game, I feel like Saliba and Tomiyasu injured just like that. And that was pretty much the end of that title race. We know that we get multiple injuries stacked up on that left back position. And so now we have 2 injuries in the forward position. Saka and what would be his most natural backup in Raheem Sterling are both injured at the very same time and are going to be out for weeks. And so Arsenal are very much so in a very precarious situation going into a difficult period of time where, we're just starting to see maybe a little bit of positivity, a little bit of a form, if you will. We're coming off of a massive win against Crystal Palace and another, good win midweek. And now this injury could potentially throw all of our ambitions, whatever ambitions you feel like we have left, into question. Can we beat Newcastle home and away without Saka? Can we get to that final and beat Liverpool without Saka? Can we get to the next round of the FA Cup without Saka? Can we win our Premier League games against Saka without Saka? So, we are about to find out, because we have not really been without him. And I'm a firm believer of, when you fuck around, you'll find out. I really do think that Arsenal have left themselves in a position where they are just an injury away from calamity and catastrophe. And we saw it with Odegaard, and I can only imagine with an even more important player, with an even more special player, with a more talented player in Saka, our most important player, that this could end up getting ugly if Arteta doesn't find solutions. We'll also talk about, the whole, situation with the transfer window that's coming up, because obviously a lot of Arsenal fans are hoping that Arsenal go into the window. But, honestly, it is what it is. I said at the beginning of the season that when the window closes after 2 failed title races and you come out of that window with Raheem Sterling, Calafiori, and Marino, I just can't fathom, like, I just can't understand how we got to that place. And we're now just like 2 windows beyond, like, the initial window where we felt like we needed these attacking signings, and we're still asking for them, and we still don't feel confident that we're going to get them, because any team in a title race that's gotten an injury to their best and most important player, and they're going to be out for weeks meaning months, they would go into this January transfer window and look at it as an opportunity to salvage their season. But Arsenal are very much so next season. But they should really be analyzing the way that these last 3 seasons have gone, 2.5 seasons, and realize that you can't just wait for the perfect moment and expect to win trophies. We are living right now in a season where it should be our season. It's the season that they waited for, which was when Man City fell off. And we are watching Liverpool have the season that we're meant to be having. And so they should be like realizing at this stage that you can't just wait for the perfect time to pull the trigger. You have to always stay ready and be in a position to take advantage of our rivals falling off, you know? And essentially, people are taking advantage of us falling off now. We've fallen off after the last 2 seasons, and now other teams are taking advantage of us falling off and City falling off. So if you don't stay ready, then here you are. And yeah, we weren't prepared, so we prepared to fail, essentially. And so if they go into this January window thinking, well, about the summer, and if we do this, then the summer, there's no guarantee that we're going to get another decent opportunity to win the league. I mean, or win trophies. We don't know where we're going to be at. We don't know what the next season is going to hold. So you have to push for trophies now. And so to let the rest of the season just go into the bin because you guys don't want to push anything for this season would be very disappointing. That being said, Arsenal don't ever really seem ready to do what's necessary to win. We get very close. We're nearly men. And so I'm not really anticipating Arsenal doing anything. I know that they, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a couple of days ago, Arteta said that, basically they're prepared to go with what they have, and only like an extraordinary, opportunity or an injury would make them go into the window where, well, here we are. Here we are. We are definitely in a right now where we've gotten 2 injuries in a position that we don't really have a natural replacement for. And the window opens in like 7 days. So this is probably their worst case scenario, because whenever you say like, well, we'll go with an injury or because you're basically trying to tell people that you're not going to do anything. And exactly what they said that they, the exact scenario that they painted is now in front of them. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to not go into the window without the Arsenal fan base feeling like it's a huge fuck you, because we already know that they're not prepared to go into this window and make any major signings. I don't know when we're going to make these major signings, but they're not prepared. They weren't prepared to do it this past summer. They're definitely not going to be prepared to do it in January. So Arteta's going to have to get his thinking cap on and figure out a way to get Jesus, Martinelli, Trossard, Havertz going, even Wanyeri, because Wanyeri is going to be used as a forward probably in this period. So yeah, it's up to them to figure it out. But, you need internal solutions, and you also need to be prepared to go into the window and make things shake. If the Odegaard injury is any indication of how we deal with figuring out internal solutions, then yeah, I am concerned. I am concerned because we're not really the internal solutions when it comes to bigger players out. Meaning, we've seen what it was like with Saliba. Our title hopes went out the window. We saw what it was like with Odegaard. We couldn't win a game. We couldn't pass the ball. We couldn't do anything. So what is SAKA going to be like? Yeah, because there's going to be somebody in the comment section saying, yeah, but we dealt with, left back out. I'm not talking about the left back. We know who our 3 most important players are, Saliba, SAKA, and Odegaard. And 2 of those, we've seen what a long-term injury looks like. So internal solutions is not really our tea. Internal solutions usually ends up being a player that doesn't suit that position, or a really bad older player being in that position, playing poorly for multiple games, and Arteta just sticking with it because he can't do anything else, not trusting young players, so Arteta's going to have to get his thinking cap on, because there probably are internal solutions, but he's saying that he feels like Havertz can play right wing, and I will not be there. I will not be there if Havertz is playing right wing. I feel like the most obvious thing to do is to put either Jesus or Martinelli or Wanieri on the wing, but Arteta, being the person that he is, will put Havertz at right wing, and I will not be there. So yeah, Sai says, because we have a million left backs. Victor says, Arteta saying we have one of the smallest squads earlier in the season should have been way more alarming. People just brushed over that. Now we're seeing the consequences of what we sowed. But you know what, Victor, I actually pulled it, because when he said we had one of the most thinnest squads, I thought to myself, I fucking heard that before. This is not the first time that he said it. And I actually pulled the tweet. This was in January of last season, January 29th. 2024. And he said, we have one of the thinnest squads in the league, that's for sure. And when you talk about numbers, especially in certain areas, we are really thin. And so January 29th, now fast forward to December 23rd, and he's saying the exact same thing. But, there's been multiple windows where nothing has been done. So that's where I'm kind of like, if we do have these thin areas and we do have these problem areas, why did we go through a summer without addressing these obvious places, and maybe at that point, because I'm trying to think back what that was, it might have been left back or something that he was talking about then. But the reality is, I don't even know if it's just about numbers. I feel like we lack talent in some positions. I feel like that's more the issue. We don't have the level of talent that can carry you over the line. We have players, but they're just players that it's like, and then we do have a large amount of players that play a certain position, but you also got rid of Fabio Vieira and Emil. You got rid of players like that and you didn't replace. So a lot of these things are lack of talent, and then also an imbalanced squad. You have an imbalanced squad where you have 3 DMs of great quality. You have Jorginho, Partey, and Rice. No matter what you think of those 3 players, that is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the DM position. No one else in Europe has that level of DM quality. No one. But we have that. No one else has 8 left backs. No one else has Calafiori, Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, now Miles Lewis-Skelly coming through. No one else has that. We got that. But it's like, we have nobody to step in for Saliba, one of our most important players. We have no depth behind Saka, one of our most important players. We have 0 depth behind Odegaard. And so, yes, I understand we have a thin squad, but you keep buying goalkeepers, you keep buying left backs, you keep buying DMs, multiple windows of buying in those same positions. You've had multiple opportunities to bring in players that play in these positions, and you haven't done it. And then you also just have a lack of talent in the positions that make the biggest difference. Attacking mid, forward positions, so these are all things that we've known since January 29th of last season, so I mean, I hear you, but you've known this. So and it's not, when I say you, it's not just Arteta, because obviously there are lots of conversations around who's to blame. And I always think the conversation is quite nuanced. I think when you start talking about who is to blame, they always talk about how it's a collaborative effort. So I have to believe that, especially with the well-documented information that we have about how the club has been run over the last couple of years, we know that Mikel Arteta has a very loud voice in the room when it comes to transfers. He is not shut out. He's not in the dark. He is leading things in some ways. He has the ability to ask for things that no one else particularly thinks is a good idea, but he gets it anyway because they back him. So he's not out. He's not blameless, and neither is Edu and the rest of the people doing transfers. It is a collaborative effort. So when I say they or them or you, I'm talking about that whole group. But there's always, when we're not doing well, there is a section of the fans, there's sections on each side. One group blames Arteta fully, and then the other side says that Arteta is being sabotaged. And I think that there's nuance, because there's just no way that you can, in your right mind, believe that Arteta has no say in what's going on. Because one, we know he has say. We know it. But equally, there are other people involved that are not doing a great job either. And I wonder, now that we have seen that CEO position for the Nottingham Forest group, I don't know what that Greek guy's name is. You guys know I'm talking about, the guy that owns Nottingham Forest, that was meant to be giving this job to Edu, that job went to someone else. So I can't wait to hear what comes out off of the back of that, because it may be the case that, not that he was forced out, but there must be some difference. And I don't care how they present things at times. I don't think that everything is always roses and Arsenal family. That's the way that the media portrays us, because that's what the club puts out there. But I have a feeling, especially with the reports after Edu leaving, that he felt like his position was minimized and that he didn't have a lot of say, and that, blah, 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 that it wasn't all roses and sunshine and rainbows. There was a difference of opinion on how things were going, right? And so the idea that it's not a collaborative effort to put us in this position, there's always nuance to the conversation. Just like I feel like there's not one player that has led us astray or has fucked us over. It's never just one person. But Arsenal as a collective has put us in a situation now where our best player is injured, and the player that was meant to be their backup is also injured. And the fans already know in their stomach that we are not going to get anybody in January. But then equally, we've watched how managing an injury and using internal solutions has gone. So I can understand why people are writing off the season. So yeah, Victor says, wait, Edu didn't even get the job. No way. Unless this is a different job. This is the job that he was meant to get, the CEO, was he not? Let me pull it up. Because this is something that's going under the radar, but I was like, the fuck? Former AS Roma CEO Lina Suluku has signed in as new Nottingham Forest and Marianakis multi-group CEO. The agreement with Evangelos Marianakis Group will be effective from the 5th of January of 2025. The Nottingham Forest and Marianakis multi-group CEO. Was that not the role that Edu was meant to have? Unless I missed something, he didn't get that job. I mean, it's crazy. I'm really like, yeah. I don't know where Edu's going, or maybe there's a different role, but I could have sworn he was meant to get the CEO position, because he left Arsenal because he wanted the CEO position at Arsenal, but he didn't get it, or didn't, like he wanted more power and couldn't get it. So I don't know, but I can't wait to hear what comes out of the back end of this, because that makes me think that it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine back there. It couldn't have been. It couldn't have been. Mata says, honestly, they will probably bring Reese back and call it a day for January. They can't, because Ree Nelson is also injured. Ree Nelson is out for like 10 weeks. So I hear this, but you can't bring back somebody who's also injured. I just talked to my mom about that a couple of seconds ago. Mubarak says, what if Arteta's first signing winger like Nico Williams instead of a striker? What if Arteta's first signing winger like Nico Williams instead of a striker? I don't know. I mean, just sign someone. We need a winger and a striker. So sign someone. Simba says, Edu is supposed to be the director of all the clubs. But I mean, that was the CEO job that he was meant to get, unless it's a different job, because maybe he's something else. Maybe there's a lower job that he's getting. Let me look it up. Because, child, that sounds like the same job he was meant to be getting. And we haven't really heard anything about it. It was never confirmed. It was just he's in the sightlines for it, isn't it? Because that's the exact job that she's getting. Let's see. Just looking it out. So it says Nottingham Forest and Olympiacos owner Marianakis has always wanted Edu as a top target to coordinate the group. Just trying to find. Yeah, I'll find it in a second, but yeah, I could have sworn that's the exact same job. It was the CEO job and overseeing that multi-club view or whatever it was. So yeah. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, because surely he got that job. He must, like seeing the picture of him with Sterling on deadline day just made me sick to my fucking stomach. So this is what it says. Arsenal director Edu will join the Marianakis group, coordinating Nottingham Forest, Olympiacos, Rio Avenue, and potential future clubs. It doesn't say ambitious project. So maybe he's below her, because I'm trying to understand what the difference is, but I could have sworn he got this, like it was the CEO job that they were talking about. Sporting director of Arsenal. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll see what comes of this, but honestly, I'm not seeing a big difference between the jobs, because they're both overseeing everything, unless he's taken a lower job, which the job below a CEO would be a sporting director or something like that, maybe head of all of the talent. I don't know what he's going to be doing, but yeah, that's crazy. It also was never like set in stone, so I don't know. Let's see. Did Nottingham Forest or anybody, did they? I'm just looking it up, guys. Because surely he got that job. Everybody is blaming Edu, which Edu obviously does have some culpability here for sure. Can't read that. That's in a different language. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll know soon whether or not he really got that job or not. Wake Up says very different positions, but that's not what it said. So again, listen, because you guys just heard Nottingham Forest and then didn't listen to the rest. So it said the agreement with Marianakis Group, okay, so has signed in as new Nottingham Forest and Marianakis multi-group CEO. So not just Nottingham Forest and Marianakis multi-group CEO. So she's not just the CEO from Nottingham Forest. She is the CEO of their entire multi-group. Also, I think Fabrizio Romano just put in Nottingham Forest so that the people that are obviously following him from, the Premier League know who this is. Because if you just say Vasco and Olympiacos, no one cares. But Nottingham Forest, okay, so Premier League fans are paying attention. But this says new Nottingham Forest and Marianakis multi-group CEO. She is the head of their entire thing. So, yeah, to me, that's different. That's the same role he was meant to get. He was supposed to be overseeing as the CEO as for all of the clubs. Mancoob says, surely since Edu left, that's enough time to find a director for this jam. He left weeks ago. I did a show on this. The club is already drip feeding the media about this Jason, whatever his name is, Ito, that already works at the club, who is Edu's number 2. So they're probably just finding a good time to let us know, but he's going to run the January transfer window, and then they're probably going to give him the job. Prophet says, I knew this was coming. Ethan Wanyeri can play that side, also link up with Odegaard, Havertz, and Jesus will try their best to give them some space. Shot. Jordan Hill says, did you talk about Sterling injury? Yes. Yes. I did talk about Sterling's injury. He'll be out for a while too. So yeah. Let's see. Chosen One says, "Hey Jess, hopefully this makes the club finally realize that they need to be careful with SAKA and get him some help to take the burden off of him. Slight positive is that he's getting some rest." Sai says he might have fluffed that tweet, second language and all. Yeah, true. Owen says, even if he left for a lateral move, the fact that he left midseason tells you it isn't well. We just ran a convenient narrative. And I think Owen makes a good point that I think a lot of times, like, obviously we don't want to think that the club is not in a good space, or because obviously Arsenal want to always position themselves, especially in the media, as a family, welcome together. Nobody ever leaves because of discontent or anything like that, or malcontent. But the reality is him leaving us high and dry. Like, look at the way Olabe is going to leave. He's going to leave, what's it called? Sociedad, but he's staying until the end of the season. Edu left us high and dry in November, knowing that the January transfer window was 2 months away. No one leaves high and dry that quickly without there being issues or them being desperate to go. And as somebody that was there for a long time, that respects the club and stuff, I'm so sorry, but obviously I'm not saying that they were throwing fucking punches, in Soba Training Center, but I'm saying that I don't think that they were getting along. I think this last transfer window was probably the straw that broke the camel's back, because make no bones about it, it was an atrocious window. I don't know why people were trying to make it seem like it was okay. So yeah, Ali says basically head of football operations. Exactly. If Arsenal misses out on Premier League title, it's really bad, because next season City will be back and Chelsea will be stronger. Chosen One says, why do you think Arteta trusts MLS more than Ethan? Surely he's got to start playing him more in Saka's absence. No, I just think Arteta trusts MLS. It's not that Arteta trusts MLS more. It's that Ethan plays in the positions of players that are our most important players. Like, he's basically Odegaard's backup. And we also I think we understand at this stage, Arteta's left center mid is very much so a structural piece. It's not a creative piece in the team. And so Ethan, just like Emil, Fabio, these players are not really going to get long runs in the team in that position, because Arteta likes that person to be more of a DM or more of a structural piece. They're probably never going to be creative player. And so his options are very much so right wing and right center mid. And the two players that play there are not there unless they're injured. He's not going to play there. He's not going to play them there. With MLS, I think it's just different, because the players that are playing at left center mid, he doesn't, it's like, first of all, there was like no one there, and they're not as important because our left center mid always changes anyway. And I think in that period of time where Arteta could have played Ethan, he went away from it mostly because he was scared. He was scared. He'd rather, for a position that's very important to the system, our left back is kind of like important, not necessarily the person, but the way that operates, but the person at right center mid is the only player that can play there. And so I think Arteta panicked because he didn't want to put all that pressure, because that's a pressurized position, right center mid, because you guys see how we are without it. If there's no one, if Odegaard's not there, it doesn't work. Odegaard literally has to be in that position. So I think Arteta panicked because he didn't want to put pressure on Ethan to be our everything, because that player cannot hide. That player cannot not be, that player is so, it's fundamental to everything that we're doing, that he panicked and used Trossard. But I think a lot of it is mostly just based on MLS gets more playing time, because the left center or the left back is not really like a stationary position. It's not somebody like one person plays there, like 16 people play there. You know what I mean? So yeah. But yeah, Deflected Mind says, isn't it common sense not to play youngsters each and every match? I still don't understand why Arteta can't understand that. So yeah. And Chosen One says, that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I just wonder if he'll turn to Ethan more now. And honestly, I don't know. I think thinking about internal solutions before we talk about, transfer window and stuff like that, there are options, and he listed those options as basically everybody that plays up front can play right wing, and he'll probably try them there. We most recently seen Martinelli play there, and I think it was fine. It works. And maybe that'll help Martinelli too, because the way that he makes his decisions will be a lot easier for him, because doesn't have to think as much on the right. He can just get to the byline and cross it in, and his crosses were better from the right than they were from the left. And so maybe that'll help Martinelli out, a player that we're going to be heavily relying upon in this period. Jesus also plays very well on the right. I'm just not sure if taking him out of the 9 position, I think, is a little bit tricky, because the whole point of Jesus is that he came to Arsenal to prove that he's a number 9. So moving him to the wing, I feel like should just be normal, but I don't think for somebody with such a fragile bit of confidence right now, it'd be the right thing to move him out of the 9. So I think you kind of have to keep him there and trust him as a 9, instead of okay, well, let's just shunt you out to the wing. And then you have Ethan that can play there. And then he said Havertz, which he's probably the last person I'd play at right wing, if I'm honest. I just don't see, I remember Arteta tried to play him at right center mid. I didn't think that worked at all when Odegaard was out. He also, but he's going to find a way to put him into the team. So I can see him putting out right wing. I think he's probably the worst option. So we'll see what Arteta does. But I think just Ipswich, if I'm looking at Ipswich, I'm playing Jesus. I know Jesus and Martinelli are going to play. And then the third person is whoever else. But I'd probably start Jesus at the 9. And this is where it gets tricky, because Arteta said that, at the end of the Crystal Palace game, that when Declan came in, we looked a lot better. And we did. And so if he's ready to start, we know Declan Rice is going to start. He is like a guaranteed starter, so, but he doesn't start him at the 6. So then where does that leave Havertz? Because you can't drop the guy that's hot in Jesus, but Arteta likes to play Havertz at left center mid, but you have to play Declan. There's just no way to get around it. So Arteta has some decisions to make, because taking Jesus out of the 9 could hurt his fragile confidence, and putting him on Havertz on right wing is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I'm just trying to force him into the team. And honestly, I would probably start Jesus through the middle, Martinelli on the right, and Trossard on the left, or Martinelli on the left and Winieri on the right, and Jesus through the middle. I want to see how Arteta forces Kai into the team. That's, because I'm pretty sure that it's going to happen. PTM says, why do I feel like Martinelli and Jesus are going to go on a run of form which convinces the club not to buy this January? I mean, what kind of form the January transfer window opens up in a week, so if their decision, they should already know what they're going to do. Going into this window, regardless of Saka's injury, we should have been ready to make a move, so I think, they either want to or they don't. They're not going to, Jesus and Martinelli going on a little run, the window opens, it opens tomorrow, you know what I mean? So I kind of get what you're saying, but I want that run. To be honest, I don't want them not to go on a run. And here's my thing is I'm always a lot of people don't want Jesus to play well because they're afraid that the club is not going to do anything. I'm going to be honest with you. Jesus played pretty well in that first season for us, despite the injury. He was really good. SAKA was good. Martinelli was fabulous. Odegaard was great. And we all still felt like going into that summer that we needed to buy an attacker, and Arsenal didn't do it. So if you think a run is going to stop them from doing anything, think again. They didn't think after the wonderful season that those 4 players had that we needed to get anybody. So a run now it's not going to be the difference or not. Either they want to or they don't. Either they want to bring somebody in or they don't, because they chose not to after we were so close to winning the title that first season. And those players played well then. So if they either want to or they don't. And I don't care. I want Jesus to play well, maintain this level of form. I want Martinelli to come back into form. I want everybody to play well, because my whole thing is a run from these players should not stop you from doing anything, because regardless, you needed these attacking players. We needed a striker and another winger back when they had their best season. So, I need that run. I need it because it's the only way that we're going to survive this. But also, Jesus and Martinelli do play well together. And I think maintaining players together that play well together is so important, because we don't have a lot of synergy up front anymore, because we've had players in and out. And so we know SAKA and Havertz work well together. We know Jesus and Martinelli work together. Trossard and Jesus work together. Martinelli and Kai Havertz do not. So Arteta has some important decisions to make, because he can't just throw players in there. He needs to think, about who plays well together. Marco says, we saw that before, Jess. They didn't buy a 9 after the Havertz run. I know, but my point is that, you're talking about Jesus and Martinelli having a run. We knew we needed those attacking players. We needed that striker. We needed that winger at the very least in the season that they damn near won the league. So, they either want to or they don't. That's my point. They either want to or they don't. This whole, if they go on a run, blah, 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 they either want to or they don't. Because here's my case in point. After the Aston Villa game, mind you, Aston Villa game was damn near at the end of the season. The Aston Villa game wasn't in January. The Aston Villa game was damn near the end of the season. And after that game, they said through the media that they felt like we needed, this is in the midst of Kai Havertz's run, by the way, that they were going to go out there and get Isak and Olise. After we went out in the Champions League to Bayern, which again, it wasn't in January. It wasn't when Havertz wasn't playing well. It was in the midst of Havertz's great run that they felt like they needed X factor. So this whole, they know that they need these players. They know. They tried to get Sesko in the summer. They tried to get Nico Williams. So it's whether they want to or not, these runs don't mean anything. These runs don't mean anything, because Havertz was in the midst of a great run, and they still knew that they needed X factor. They still knew that they wanted to go after players like Isak and Olise. They just didn't, because they didn't want to. They just didn't want to. Afsar says, we are getting Marquinhos back. I'm so excited. Isaac says, no clear reports of any transfers. We're not getting a soul. Blaze says, why some Arsenal fans expecting that we'll buy players in January? Our fan base don't learn from previous experience. I don't actually see us doing anything in January. I think they pretty much, that whole only an injury. I don't even think an injury will make them move, because I actually don't even think that they're willing to give the money. Oh, Lord. San Diego Wave has actually signed Jonas Eideball. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I just don't think that they were ever prepared, to go into that window and get anything done. I don't know if the Cronkies are not really wanting to put any more money, meaning, they don't want to put in any more loans, because they never really put in their own money. They always put in, gave us loans, and they're not really getting anything back from it. So now, they've stopped sanctioning those loans, and they want to see sales, because that's essentially what stopped us from getting anything this past summer. Was they put a huge outlay on the Declan Rice, Havertz, Timber, and Raya window with very little sales. Remember, we didn't sell jack shit that summer. We spent 200 million and then didn't sell. So then coming into this past window, they wanted to see sales. So that's why we were selling Emil, we're selling Nketiah, and there was a lot of sell before we buy. Remember how long it took us to get Marino, how long it took us to get Calafiori. We didn't actually move on Calafiori because we didn't move until Real Madrid wanted him. And then we decided to sanction that, but we were still waiting on more sales to come. And so we didn't have the cash, we didn't have the money. The Cronkies wanted to sell. They wanted to sell instead of actually buy, you know? And that's why when you have the money and you make the decisions that you made, and didn't bring in Kudus, because I had this conversation with somebody online that was saying that Havertz was a vital signing, like we had to bring him in. And I'm just like, you wouldn't be in the situation that you're in right now if you had bought Kudus. Because not only would you have had the X factor potentially that could have helped you last season when we were 2 points away, but you would have had somebody that can play 9. So when Jesus was out, it would have been fine because you could have played Kudus up there. You would have somebody that could have stepped in for Odegaard. You also would have had somebody that can step in for Saka. So all of these injuries now that are plaguing us where we can't play at all, those would have been solved because we would have had that player. Not only that, we would have had 25 million left over because Kudus was only going to cost us 40 million. So those decisions that you make have a ripple effect on windows coming on. We're not like Chelsea. We're not just going to keep spending. So now we're in a position where the Cronkies don't want to front any more money. They don't want to give us more loans. They just want to sell. And we end up with Sterling. And people are telling me that Havertz was a vital signing. Like, I'm like, all right, cool. Blaze says Arteta baited to Havertz run last season. Then the club decided not to buy a striker. Arteta really believed with Havertz as a striker, we can compete with the title. Televator says, I love your reactionary take. I think it's only reactionary if I hadn't been talking about this stuff for over a year now. It's not really reactionary when I've been speaking about it for a year. Anybody who's actually been on my channel knows that I've spoken about how bad that Havertz signing actually was, not because he's a bad player, but the ripple effect from buying a player that didn't solve any of our problems and how that's affected us in windows going forward. I've spoken about that. I've spoken about how not having backups for Saka and Odegaard are going to hurt us. I've spoken about how we've needed these forward signings and how it was only a matter of time before you get these injuries and then boom, your season is, so it's not really reactionary when you've been talking about it. I feel like there's always going to be people that are coming in that are telling you that, oh my gosh, you're just panicking for no reason. I'm not panicked. At the beginning of the season, I said, I didn't think that we're going to win the league. So, I'm not panicked. I'm just sitting here. I'm having a conversation with you guys and saying like, the reality is, you could have seen this coming a mile away. It's Saka. We're lucky that he stayed fit as long as he did. So, and I'm also not saying that, we're not gonna win any games. That's not what I'm saying. But based on the way that we've dealt with Saliba and Odegaard's injuries, I think you're well within your right to be a little concerned that our best player is not going to be injured for a sustained amount of time. So you can really miss me with all this, like you're just reactionary or whatever. You can save that for the day when we actually win a trophy. Like, save it. Amina says Arteta doesn't want to admit that Havertz signing was not necessary. He would rather force it with him than admit that the signing didn't work. And the funny thing is that there's also like now a cult following of Kai people that are basically just also Arteta people that will not admit that two things can be true at the same time, that Havertz is working and has worked and has been a decent player for us, but he did not solve any of the problems that we actually had, which was X factor, a striker, even left center mid, because he was bought for left center mid and now he's playing as a striker sometimes, so instead of coming into chats with your narratives all in line, how about just look at it from like an honest view that there's nobody on this planet that could actually think that that signing was necessary despite it work like him being good for us. No one in their right mind could have said, when we ended the 2022-2023 season, would have said we needed a second striker, number 10, after that season that has a bad record in the Premier League and has been pretty much labeled a flop. Oh, and for 65 million, and make him our highest paid player. No one said that. So it's just, you could really miss me with all but Havertz has been good. That doesn't mean that he was a good signing. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? It's just weird. Like, I just don't understand, because I like Havertz. I think he's a good player and he's done good things, but like there's just nothing in my gut that makes me think that we needed that player. And I just don't feel like that's negative or reactionary, anything. Like it's just weird, you know? Yo-Yo says Arteta needs to beat the SAKA merchant allegations. Sai says, I'm so sick of that. Wake up, no team must. It's that simple. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Johan says, not to mention how the Havertz situation helped Chelsea clear their books to get Palmer. Yeah, I mean, let's not talk about how many times that they've gotten good players off of the back of allowing us to take their not so great players. So yeah, to me, it's not reactionary when I've been talking about this. It's just this is another moment where that becomes glaringly obvious when you're going into a January transfer window knowing you're not going to get anything, but your best players are injured. So why can't we move on players? Why don't we already have those players in our team? It's because we wasted resources. We wasted resources in the past. We bought like 8 left backs. We've bought like 50 goalkeepers. This isn't the first time that we've talked about misuse of funds. But again, I'm not saying that we're going to lose every single game, but the remit is not to just survive this period. The remit is for you to survive and thrive throughout this situation without your best player and go win trophies. So with that being the context around what we're talking about, you have every right to be concerned when we're how many points behind Liverpool. We know we have Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, so I'm just saying, like, within the context of winning trophies, this is concerning. This is concerning. So again, like, I really don't think we need to have like, oh my gosh, but look at the run that we're on. But we don't have to have those conversations. We know that the conversation is not going on a good run. It's about winning trophies. Like, we don't have to do that. Nico says the season is going to be a wake-up call for all the toxic positive fans who said it's because of City. We can't win the league, then Liverpool win it at the end. They'll just say that's because we have too many injuries. Like, we already know what their thing is going to be, but we had injuries. Like, I literally had somebody tell me the other day that the reason why we're not top of the league is because it was stolen from us from the refs. And so there is a large part of this fan base that do not live in reality. Like, of course, the red cards were not great, but even with red cards, you don't have to lose those games. And we've dropped a lot of points since then, since those red cards. So, yeah, something like we basically have gotten no rub of the green this season. I'll say that for sure. Like, some of the luck that we've gotten over the last couple of seasons is not here this season. We're losing all of our best players to injury for longer periods of time. Any sort of like foul situation or whatever, we're getting like the harshest kind of outcome from every single thing. So I understand that, but the controllables we're not even controlling. So when you haven't even controlled the controllables, like what you could control, you've left yourself to the elements. So of course the harshest thing is happening. You're getting the harshest result because you didn't even do anything to help yourself. So I think it's just important to maintain like the clear view. And yes, this is concerning. Losing your best player is concerning, especially when there's questions around the attackers. And we know that we're very much so SAKA FC. We know this. So there's no reason to pretend like this isn't a concerning matter and calling anybody who's, actually calling question to the people that have put us in this situation reactionary or toxic. It's just weird. Saida says, I've probably said this multiple times, but my issue with Havertz signing was the price and his wages. He'll eventually become an expensive squad player, which proves that he wasn't needed, which, I mean, when you have a player that's your highest earner, they can't be a player that doesn't solve a lot of your problems. It has to be somebody that comes in and instantly makes things clear. And I think that the Havertz signing has made things less clear. And that's pretty much all it is. Like, to be our highest earner and for a player that we probably should have spent like 30 million on, but we spent double that. You just have to mark it as a questionable signing at best. Televator says, my concern is the weak mentality of our fan base. One setback and all things fall to the ground. I mean, but saying that I'm reactionary because you're concerned about the weak mentality of the fan base, whether my mentality is good or not, that doesn't change the fact that the Havertz signing didn't make sense, so you're attributing this whole like wanting everybody to be positive about things that are not going well, even though I'm talking about the Havertz signing objectively not being a good one. So you can't control everybody's mentality. There are just some Arsenal fans that are just not as bought into the process as others. And as long as you want the team to win and, you're within reason and you're not just rage baiting, I think you have a good case of just having an opinion that's different than yours and it being okay. But this fan base has a very difficult time having difference of opinions. They want an echo chamber. They want everybody singing from the same hymn sheet. And if you're not, then you get attacked. And not everybody is rage baiting for clicks. Some people just don't think we're doing all the right things. And we're not, so what doesn't help is when the toxic positive typey people come in and then start pretending like everything is fine, when losing your best player fundamentally, when you're struggling to score goals, when you're not really a great attacking side, when those are been conversations that have been happening all season, for you guys to act like that doesn't matter. So you guys are just as bad as the people that go fully negative. You're not any better. Like, everybody is bad. Like, let's just have honest conversations. It's so tiring with the weak mentality and the sky is falling. Well, not winning any trophies this season is the equivalent to the sky falling for a lot of Arsenal fans. And we're staring down the barrel of potentially not winning any trophies, especially not the big ones. So again, we can stop acting like this is all rainbows and butterflies. Like, I don't understand why we have to pretend. Yo-Yo says excuses will always be made for Arteta. I'm waiting for him to stick the landing for once. And he must. Like, if we don't go into the window, it's so important for him to figure out what group of players works together quickly so that we can maintain a vibe, because this team, up until the last, 90 plus 45 minutes, really was like struggling, against Everton and Fulham to score goals and to look decent, so we're kind of in a funky run of form where it's like we were winning and then we were not winning and now we're winning again. But now you lose a fundamental piece. So how do you make sure that you don't go into another 3-4 game period of like nonsense? How do you make sure that you get those 3 points against Ipswich and it doesn't become another Everton or a Fulham? How do you do that? And so that's up to Mikel, to figure that out. And we haven't seen a lot of games without SAKA, but the ones that we have seen were not good. We know that we struggled. So yeah, he must figure it out. He must figure it out. It's up to him to figure it out. But, the club not going into the window being an almost certainty is very, like, it's not great. But, we'll talk about potential targets and stuff like that if we were to go in a second. But yeah, like, based on what the club has already kind of put out there, they're not prepared to go into the window and get anything done. This is their personal worst case scenario, that their best player is now injured for a significant amount of time. Wake Up Mind says he did say how to manage existing players is a challenge, so it's on him. G-Tan says Martinelli can do well on the right, Trossard on the left, give Wanyeri time to shine. Chosen One says getting star attackers also takes the burden off the players on the pitch, so does giving them more freedom. This rigid system is very difficult to play in, and I agree. I think as good as our players are, they're probably some of the most burdened players in the league because there's just never anybody else to pick up the slack. And you watch like a team like Liverpool, not only is everybody scoring, meaning like I saw McAllister scoring from midfield, like just random shit. Sabasali is scoring, Salah is scoring. The only player that ain't scoring is Nunez. So when you have like only like 2 or 3 players that you think are going to probably score, and you're only creating chances for certain players, it's hard. Like, and you need to have more talent in your team if you're going to play this way and have less chances. Whatever vibe we've been on in the last 90 and 45 minutes of play, he needs to maintain, because these players in particular cannot exist in a system that doesn't create a lot of chances for everyone. Left center mid needs to be scoring. Odegaard needs to score more goals. He's another player that there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, and he must he must step up in this period as well. It's not just Jesus and these guys. He needs to pick up the slack with goals too, because that's probably the biggest concern I have with him right now is that not only is he not taking shots, but on the off chance that he does get one, he just cannot kick it in the back of the net. So Odegaard's going to need to step up. If Rice is going to be playing left center mid, what we saw against Crystal Palace must maintain. Trossard needs to score goals. Jesus needs to score goals. Everyone needs to score goals. And that only comes with this team when we're playing with confidence, tempo, pace, passing between the lines, creating chances, and not playing funeral football. And so Arteta can't go into a shell after this because he's afraid now. He almost needs to give this team more freedom, because this group only plays well up front when they have more chances. That's it. Like he must, whatever this vibe is, he has to continue with it. 100%. And like it's only a small period. And I said this after on the match reaction that obviously we're not going to be better without SAKA, but we still maintained a vibe when he went off. And I think that's because we just attacked. Like we attacked with confidence. We were clinical. And so we can still maintain this to a certain level. But what we can't do is start modifying things in a way that is not going to suit the players, meaning don't put Havertz at right wing. Don't do that. Keep playing Jesus where you're playing him. Get Martinelli in good positions and allow the team to attack. Allow the team to attack. We may concede, but we need to allow this team to attack because we won't score enough goals. We will not score enough goals. Johan says, I believe Arteta will be more than comfortable playing Ethan at right wing instead of left center mid. I see it coming. Yeah, I think so too. I think he'll probably get more minutes there. I think the left center mid and also playing Odegaard's position puts a lot more pressure on him, but putting him up front, probably help him. I mean, he played him at 9 against Crystal Palace. So I'm expected to see more of him, especially with Sterling out, which I don't think is like, it's kind of like Ree Nelson being out. It's like, but it still is an extra person out. So Chosen One says, honestly, if SAKA didn't have to be a fullback as well as a winger, he'd be less banged up. And obviously there's a large section of the fan base that has been saying that this is coming. I feel a little bit more in the middle of it, that SAKA, as one of our best players, is going to play a shit ton of minutes. And so we need to be okay with that. But there has been times where I felt like Arteta just did the most, like bringing him on in cups when it's already won, or, keeping him on when we're 6-0 up and not, just throwing anybody on. There's been times where he's done too much, so, and I think he might be paying for that. And then, the style of play, having to defend a lot more. There's a lot of wear and tear on the body. So this was always in the post, I feel maybe less, like, I don't know. I feel like I feel less about the style of play, more about him maybe doing less of like the full 90s. Like I get that, but this was always going to happen. He's playing too many minutes, so we just have to deal. We just have to deal at this stage. There's 713 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Yo-Yo says, I'm in the minority, but I don't want anyone signed without there being a sporting director appointed. We need someone to protect Arteta from himself and the squad from the manager. I don't think Yo-Yo, I don't think you were on the stream, but I was talking about how the club is already kind of drip feeding us this PR about Jason Ito. Arteta name dropped him in the press conference when they asked him about the sporting director. He said, I'll be heavily involved. This person needs to cooperate. And Jason Ito is doing a really good job and we really like him. That was the first clue. Then Gunner Blog came out with a article at The Athletic speaking about how they may have already found their guy. Edu's number 2. I don't think there's going to be an appointment. I think they're just going to shift things around and keep things virtually the same, but no Edu. And Jason Ito is going to be the sporting director. So, and they already said that he's going to be managing the January transfer window. So essentially, we already have a sporting director. It's just not an outside hire. So yeah. Televator says, I think we'll be fine. Martinelli gets his big chance. Hopefully. I think if you want to think positive, glass half full, then it'll just be fine. I do think, we will see a drop in quality, obviously, because nobody can play right wing like he can, but it is what it is. I love SAKA, and I hope that his recovery goes well. He's needed a good rest, and you can think about it this way. I mean, if we can stay in competitions long enough, he'll be fresh for the run in. But he's just a player that we rely upon so heavily that you know um, that I don't anticipate us not feeling his absence. Chosen One says, honestly, oh yeah, I read that one. Blank Face Killer says, yeah, I'm about tired of this football club. I think a lot of people are a little fatigued at this stage. Nifany says, we cannot put our hopes in Martinelli. He cannot take on fullbacks. I'd rather Jesus on the right than Martinelli, to be honest. I mean, we're really, and I said this, and I forget who, I can't remember who was in the chat, was very much so saying that we can't trust anyone. We just need to go with the 12 players that we trust, basically. And you can't play Jesus, you can't play Sterling. You just have to play Havertz and Saka, and Martinelli. Don't play anyone else. And I very much so said it multiple times that we cannot go with just what we have, because on the off chance that one of them are not available, we won't have anybody else that can step in and do a job. Fast forward a month from probably that conversation, and Arteta played Jesus multiple times, and now he's on a decent run. How would we feel if Jesus was not in this run of form right now with the news about Saka and Raheem Sterling? So I say this again, that for anybody that thinks that you can just only play the 12 players that you like, you're wrong. You cannot. You must open it up to at least 16 players that have played decent amount of minutes so that you can rely upon them. Yes, you're going to get the Kivior performance against Crystal Palace. He's not good enough, but you open yourself to get the Jesus back in form. You cannot get players back in form giving them 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there. You can't. You have to give them a run of games. They need to feel like they're going to get another chance, even if they don't do particularly well in this one. And so, yeah, you're going to have to trust more players. More minutes from Ranieri coming has to happen. It's just we don't have enough reliable players to just go with the couple of players that we like. Because the change in everybody's feelings on Jesus overnight came because we actually let him have a couple of minutes, so it could happen just that quickly. It could happen for Martinelli as well. Martinelli can have one really good game and start to take on his fullback again, because this all started back when Jesus starting against Nottingham Forest. That was a decent performance that most people just ignored because he didn't score a goal, but that was a decent performance. Then fast forward to Monaco. He missed the big chances, but he got an assist. Decent performance. Then Crystal Palace at home, hat trick, second half. Then Crystal Palace in the Premier League, 2 goals. It can happen that quickly, so Martinelli, it could happen for him, and I'm hoping that it does, because if we don't get anybody in this January transfer window, these are the guys that we're praying are going to lead us to a trophy, and they can't lead us to a trophy if they don't feel confident. Johan says, get ready to see Arsenal sign Javi Guerra, a young CDM from Valencia, which is last in La Liga. I don't know why, but I see it coming. I think I saw we've been linked with him before. Which, apart from this conversation, I would love to sign a young DM that's really talented. So I would love for us to detach from the Zubimendi cycle of abuse. I like him, but he's never going to leave that place. He's a fucking townie. So fuck him, but a young DM would be great to replace both of our older DMs that are running down their contracts. So yeah, but do I want that to happen in January? No. I think we need an attacker. Chosen One says, thing about Gabby J is that he really is a good playmaker. That's really valuable up front in Saka's absence, because Nelly on form, Kai and Trossard are more likely goal scorers. And I agree. I think Jesus, there's pros and cons to who you play up front. You play with Jesus up front, you're going to get more creativity, probably less goal scoring, but with Kai, you have more of a target man kind of situation, especially when he's actually in the box. and a little bit more of like space eater type of guy. And, he finds the space and opens up space for other people. But knowing that we're going to be lacking one of our most creative players, Jesus has to play, and you have to put him in a position to make those moves. And so I really want to see Arteta prioritize Gabriel Jesus at the 9. I really don't want to see him move to the wing. The Gabriel Jesus's narrative is he came to Arsenal to be the 9, so I think you almost have to keep him there, and he allows the Martinellis off of the wing and Trossard's off of the wing to have better chances. And so I totally agree that Gabriel Jesus coming into form in this point in time is really important, because we're going to be lacking creativity. SAKA is our creativity. So yeah, we need Gabriel Jesus to maintain his position. The only problem with Gabriel Jesus right now is not so much even if he falls away from goals, because I know even if he falls away from goals, if he's still in good form, he'll create goals for other people. It's his fitness. He's injury prone, and that's another reason why I actually don't think Arsenal can go through this period without going into the window. It's not just about the lack of maybe consistent talent, but players are very injury prone, and Gabby Jesus, if he gets injured, but without going into the window, Gabriel Jesus is really important to the creativity up front, so yeah, Yo-Yo says form is temporary and class is permanent. It's on Arteta to ride the wave until it falls. Sai says if we go into the market because of Saka, we need someone better than our current options, but add to that they need to be up to speed almost immediately in a complicated system. I'm torn. So I did a little thing for Dan. So I don't want to ruin it too much, because he asked me to record something about if I was going into the January window, how would I approach it? And essentially what I said was that I feel like the only way to do it and to get value is to buy somebody that you would also buy in the summer, but be prepared to overspend and just move that signing forward, because buying scraps is how you end up with, no offense, I like these players, but that's how you end up with Jorginho and Trossard. And then we just, they're just there, but they're just other players that aren't quite what we want, and serve as decent depth. But up front, all we need is somebody better. We don't need somebody to fill the gap. We already have players that are filling the gap. Trossard is filling the gap. Winieri will fill the gap. But you do need somebody that's a better player, that if the window if the summer window comes, you're not looking back at that signing like, I kind of wish we didn't do that. So you want to bring in somebody that you would have bought anyway. And so I would move a signing forward, and the only player that I can think of that their team would accept a bid from us in January, because that player is not getting along with the manager, and it's already kind of out there that he wants to go and that they would accept a big fee, is Kudus. You're not getting Isak. They're trying to get into top 4. He's on fire. He's their most important player. They're not going to let us have him. You're not going to be able to go to Bournemouth and get Semenyo, because Semenyo is one of their most important players, and they're going to be fighting for Europe. They're in a positive moment. Kudus is the only player that I can think of that we won't regret buying in the summer, that solves multiple problems. Even when Saka gets back, he's a player that I would still want in my team. And yeah, when I get to the summer, I'm not going to be upset that we bought him. But equally, I feel like a big bid would entice West Ham to move him on. I think there's just too much bad blood between him and the manager, and he would force a move. If we even looked at him, he would force a move. Would we have to spend the 80 something million? Yeah, but that's the price that you pay for being stupid. Play stupid games, get stupid prizes, so that's the only way that I'd go into the window. I don't want to get somebody that inevitably hinders us from doing something in the summer. Like, you're not going to be able to rebuy, so if let's say you were going to go get, let's say you got Rashford, because Rashford is available. If he doesn't work out and he ends up being the train wreck that we know that he is culturally, not necessarily as a player, I think he's super talented, but let's say it just not working out. He is going to keep you from rebuying that in the summer. Those wages and whatever fee Man United are going to want, we are not going to be able to move him on. We're not going to be able to rebuy. So you're stuck with him. I'd prefer to get somebody that I'm not going to regret, so if that means you have to move it up and spend more, I would. Because naturally in the summer, I want Kudus anyway, because this is a sidebar, but remember we had that conversation a couple of days ago about ball carriers and you guys shit on me for talking about Morgan Rogers. Some of you guys were like, no, he's not good enough, only for me to see people gagging for him again when he played against City. I'm not saying that he's perfect, but what I'm saying is that we don't have that type of player in our team. We don't have somebody that breaks game systems and can break lines without having to pass, and somebody that just has a little bit of that, like, just directness. We don't have that. And so for multiple ways, Kudus solves so many problems for us because he can carry the ball and break the game open just like a Morgan Rogers can, but he can play multiple positions. He can't play left wing, so he doesn't solve that problem, but he solves backup to SAKA problem. He solves attacking mid because you can also put him there, and he also can play as a backup number 9. So he could also, like Sai says, is up to speed. You could put him in the very next game, and he would do fabulous. So, yeah, for me, that's the only player that I could see us doing that for, because he is obtainable, but for a high fee. But again, stupid games, stupid prizes. You wait until the January transfer window, you're going to pay a premium. And that's just the reality. Or otherwise, you're getting scraps, expensive scraps too. So, like, Rashford is an expensive scrap, so yeah. Kwame says, definitely no to Rashford. Nicholas says, this was written in the stars, shaking my head. We had a poor transfer windows. I'm wondering, though, curious, but what if we play Martinelli on the right, Jesus, and then Jesus on the left and Havertz up front? I mean, that's probably what will end up happening unless Havertz ends up playing right wing for some reason. But I think Arteta will go with something like that. Marco says, I get what you're saying, but Morgan Rogers is probably the wrong example. You didn't want him. I mean, I said we needed somebody like him, though. I said we need that type of ball carrier, and people were shutting me down about Morgan Rogers. There's not, we don't need that type of player. I don't know. We know we need that type of player. Morgan Rogers, I feel like the only reason why I wouldn't want him is because the fee and because he doesn't have enough roundness to his game yet. But we need that type of player. We definitely need that type of player. And again, you guys were, I know some of you guys were gagging after that Man City game. We just need that profile. We just need that profile. Morgan Rogers would just be too expensive. And those players are so expensive. That profile, the type that can't be corralled by any sort of like positional play or, can basically break down an Arteta and Manchester City system. Those types of players are very expensive. Very expensive, because those are the types of players we don't like to play against. Like Aston Villa is our nightmare. That is our nightmare. That is City's nightmare, because teams that set up like us do not like teams like that, because they have all those ball carriers that could just break down that system like that. All that positional play, all those close connections, all that kind of stuff broken apart like that. So, and Kudus has that. Kudus has that for sure. So yeah, Johan says, Tyler Dibbling from Southampton, do you see it? I see it, but he's not finished. He's not the finished article enough. And if you wanted him, you should have just kept Emil, to be honest. Amina says, realistically, I see us getting Rashford, which is a shame. I see that Osimhen is in talks with Man United. Oh, really? That's crazy. That is insane. Laundry says, the last ball carrier we had was ESR, and that was 3 damn years ago. Nostradamus says, we do not have the finances to be going out spending 70 million on a player FFP. We need to sell all of our loanies first. Well, that's their problem. So how do we expect to get Isak in the summer? If we don't have the money now, how are we going to have the money in the summer? This is my problem as well. My problem is that we never have the money in January, but we also never have the money in the summer. So where is the money? So what are we supposed to do? We sold a lot of players this past summer and bought fucking nothing. Weren't we in the green this past summer? Because we only bought what? Calafiori and Marino. And then we sold like Nketiah, ESR. I swore we sold other players too. Ramsdale. So surely we're in the green. So if we don't have the money now, how are we going to have the money in the summer? I'm talking about whatever we were going to do in the summer, move it forward. So we're not going to get another winger or whatever in the summer. This would be it. We'd get that and maybe a striker. I don't know, but I'm trying to figure out if we don't have the money now, then when are we going to have the money? The reason why Lookman isn't possible is because he's not a scrap. He's a player that is fundamental to a team that's fighting for the Scudetto. Atalanta are top of the table. And so there's no way we're getting Lookman. Another player that we probably could have gotten in the summer because he was trying to force a move out. And if we had offered them 30, 40 million, we could have got him. Didn't move. So yeah, he's going to stay there till at least the summer. That's for sure. Isaac says, why can't we find them in the window for 20, 40 million? Well, everybody's more expensive in January anyway, because if they're a player of any sort of quality, then they know you're desperate. And so they're going to ask for more. But I don't know that these players exist that are ready to go in jet. Because that's another thing is you're buying players that need to be ready now, don't need time to adapt, all that kind of stuff. So those players are usually going to be in the Premier League or, and we're not getting anybody in the Prem for 20 to 40 million that we actually want, so that was the reason you need to do that in the summer, but we didn't do it. So now it's, again, stupid games, stupid prizes. Now, if you want to improve your squad and you don't want to end up with an expensive scrap, you're going to have to spend money on somebody that you actually really want that's ready to go. Sai says, I don't have any fucking clue where we are with FFP. I don't either. But the fact that we were only really ready to sell this past summer, and that was it. There wasn't any real push to buy anybody of significance, make big signings. I don't think we're great with FFP because all we really wanted to do was sell. I know a lot of people were like, we're great with FFP, but we've bought a lot of players and we haven't sold a lot. So I'm not sure how we could be great with FFP. I really don't, so yeah. Owen says it's a cycle. We don't have it in the January league going big in the summer. Don't go big in the summer, then find excuses. Build fans' hopes up for next summer. Yo-Yo says signing Sesko in January changes nothing. Sorry. Wake Up Mind says wouldn't buy anyone from Serie A. They are slow. Nostradamus says imagine if Kroenke actually opened up his wallet consistently since taking over. He doesn't. Nicholas says, so does anyone know what Sterling's role is? I mean, we should cancel the loan. This might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, like really, because if Arteta was expecting to get someone in and Edu could only bring Sterling after failing to bring in Nico Williams, then, because I still don't understand how you get from Nico Williams to Sterling. No other team has that. No other team has Mudryk, but we end up with Trossard. Caicedo, but we end up with Jorginho. And there's nothing else in between. There's no other player in between. I like Trossard and Jorginho, but you get what I'm saying. When we signed them, nobody was excited about them, and then somehow we ended up from Nico Williams to Sterling. I'm not quite sure how that always seems to happen. Why we're always running to Chelsea, trying to get their leftovers. I really don't understand it. And so that might just been the straw that broke the camel's back, because if Arteta feels like we're really thin in certain positions, which I feel like he's obviously talking about attacking positions, then surely, because he hasn't really used Sterling either, that he didn't like that loan signing. Because that was tragic. That was tragic. I remember when we were sitting here on deadline day and we were trying to hopium it into something decent. That is diabolical. Whoever sanctioned that had to go. Sterling on deadline day is fucking crazy. And, he's done fuck all, hasn't looked fit. And as much as I feel like maybe we could have given him more playing time, he's now injured. Cancel that shit. Send him back. Kwame says, I agree with you, Jess. We should just cancel the loan of Sterling. World Boss says, Hey, Jess, well disappointed to hear about SAKA. We must act and act fast in Jan, but this is Arsenal, right? Time for the others to step up fully. Sai says, guilty. We were all doing it. I was trying my hardest. I was like, yeah, but if you could just get to the old. No. Victor says the Sterling loan is appalling. Nostradamus says, I fear a large bid for Magalhaes or Saliba will come in this coming summer. I feel, but I feel I'm not really like into the fear mongering. Not saying that you're fear mongering, but a lot of people are fear mongering. Like, oh, we're just going to lose all of our players. They're contracted to us, so they can't just walk out the door. I do think that SAKA and Saliba will sign new deals to add like a few more years on, but that's all we're going to get. So we really need to get on it for sure. But I'm not that worried about that because they're contracted to stay. So they can't just walk out. Travis says, I don't know if Mbomo can play in a high possession team. I don't know. I think we're always worried about whether a player can play our style and all this kind of stuff. But I'll be honest, just buy talented players and it'll work out. I think, oh, but the system will work with more talent. More talent, more goals, more fun, more trophies. I think we overthink signings too much. Seeing people say, but Isak, he plays for Newcastle and they have so much space and we don't play like that. I don't give a fuck. He's talented. I don't think we'll get him, but just bring more talented players and it'll work. This whole like, they don't play like us. Nobody plays like us. We're the only team that plays like us. Don't nobody play like us, And there was a piece of this earlier this season where we weren't even a possession-based side. We had 30% possession in so many games. So I think we think of ourselves as this mini city, but we're really not. And we just need more talent in this team. More talent. Don't worry. Like if they're talented, it will work. Trust. It's not that deep. Victor says, don't let perfect be the enemy of good or something like that. We need to stop looking for the perfect signing and giving up when it doesn't work out. Clement says, this is what happens when you don't get backups for Odegaard and SAKA. Cancel the loan for Sterling. Nico says SAKA will sign, but Saliba won't, in my opinion. Fair enough. F says, I still believe Sterling shouldn't have come off versus Bournemouth. He was actually having a good game, but the way everyone was spinning that move, Arteta or Edu, someone major liar, it was just wild. It's just wild, especially because we just know that there's a lot of pressure on us to win something now. The players are now starting to talk about it. They expect to win the Champions League or the Premier League this season. So there is no project, next season, whatever. People very much so internally and externally expect us to win something this season. So the summer window was unacceptable. It really was. It was unacceptable. I was disappointed with the window prior, and I was like crashing out in this window. It just didn't fulfill the need. And we know we just need more talent up front. That's it. We could compensate for a shitty left back if we just had more talent up front. But right now it's like we have to be perfect. We have to be perfect. We have to be playing perfect. Odegaard and SAKA have to be on it. I think the sign of a really good team is even when their best player is not playing particularly well, they still win the game pretty comfortably. We're not that team. We're very much so built around two players playing perfect or well or in 9s and 10s. We're built around two center backs, and if one of those is injured, who knows what's going to happen? We're very much so on a thin kind of like there is no wiggle room. More talent up front gives you more wiggle room. More talent up front will paper over a multitude of cracks. But right now we don't have that. And so I don't know why we keep doing that, but Arsenal tend to they're like that meme was like, I asked my landlord to increase my rent by $400 so that I could show how locked in I am or whatever. It's like, we want to make it harder than what it needs to be. Kwame says, we have no choice. We must win honors this season. Nostradamus says, Barcelona need to make 70 million up over January. Ferran Torres makes total sense. Arteta has worked with him and he's versatile attacker. We would get him for 35. I think he's whack. I'm gonna be real. I think he's not the you know how it's like there's like premium leftovers and then there's like rotten leftovers. The types of leftovers that I like are the leftovers that come from Real Madrid. These Barcelona leftovers, some of those I'm not really liking. Ferran Torres is not someone that I feel like is going to come to us and is going to make us any better. I feel like he will fade into with the rest of the group and be not great, So I hear you. Barcelona need to make up some money. And maybe they have somebody in the group that they could give us. But Ferran Torres gives very much so come and get injured or come and sulk because I'm not in Spain, come and sulk because I'm not very good. Like, yeah, I might be forgetting that he played at City, but I get what you're saying. You're looking for someone, I totally understand that. Boy says Torres would be at best a shiny Trossard. Owen says Ferran Torres is something. It's an Arsenal move, though. Buy him, and it helps Barcelona get Nico, our alleged top target. I hear what you're saying. Chosen One says, hey, Jess, I thought of an interesting question. Given Saka's injury, if Arsenal don't win any trophies this season, do you give Arteta a pass? I personally don't at all. No, because it's not, because right now, like, you could make a really solid argument that we won't win a big trophy now, even prior to SAKA. So I think it's a convenient excuse to just be like, well, fuck it. We weren't going to win because we didn't have SAKA for blah, blah, blah. But I just think if we had tried everything in our power in that summer window, we had bought the striker, bought the winger, bought, whatever. And then we just happened to get really bad injuries and we missed out on the title by a point and we were in finals, then yeah, maybe. But it's just too many seasons of the same shit for me to think that it's just because of injuries this season. There was just that same shit the first season, the last season, it was so-and-so wasn't there. We didn't blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Nah. I really do think that you need to win something regardless, Marco says Krava wants to leave. Unlikely Napoli would reject 85 million. I'd make him a priority if Kudus is not on the market. I think Kudus is more likely to be on the market than Krava mid-season because West Ham aren't really playing for anything. They're nowhere near the European spots. They're not really looking like they're going to get relegated either. So like when I mean that there's teams that are playing for things, I mean, you're not going to get you're not going to get Mateus Cunha from Wolves because they could potentially get relegated. Equally, you're not going to get one of Bournemouth's best players because they're in the European spots for the first time ever. So when I'm looking at who could potentially be available, it's probably somebody in this mid-range where they already know they're not going to be fighting for Europe, but they're probably not going to get relegated. Kudus with problems with the manager and already reports of if you pay the money, we will give him to you. He's more likely to be available than somebody who is the key player for a team in another league that's fighting for the title. Because is Napoli not in the title race? Don't they have like a 5-team title race? Conte is not going to let him go. Yeah, they're second, 2 points off the top. Ain't no way. Because somebody will also pay 85 million in the summer. So I actually think Kudus is more likely to be available than Krava. I think Krava's like he's you couldn't touch him, not with them in the title race. So yeah, but it's not the best news, is it? Glass half full is I don't know what the glass half full is. Hopefully Arteta can figure out something, but the not so great reality is that like having your best player out is probably never a good thing. So yeah. I'm just looking to see if anything else came out. I don't think so. And we'll stay here for a little bit longer because I know people need the therapy because it's not the best thing to hear. Like, it's just not, But a lot of people feel like we need to go into the window, and I hope that we do. Honestly, I'd rather see that. I'd rather see Arsenal at least try and fail than consistently miss out on targets and miss out on these attacking signings and do nothing and then cry about injuries. Like, I'd much rather see them try because then at least I know it's just the other team is just better than us. Because I know Liverpool are better than us right now, but like better than us with an actual great striker, better than us with another winger. I don't think so. So it hurts watching them just walk away with the title because as much as I think that they're a great team, do I think that they're like 6 points better than us? No, but they probably are because they have the kind of attackers and players that score those goals and make it easy, and we don't have that. So I feel like that's why it's really hard to give any sort of grace is because we don't even try. We basically had the same attacking group for 3-4 years now. We've added Jesus to that, and we've added Trossard to that, and Havertz has been absorbed into that group because he wasn't good at left center mid. I saw like one of those charts that showed how much we've spent on the attack and how everybody else has spent, and it did not look good. And so, yeah, I just feel like just try. If you buy Kudus and it doesn't work, at least you have Kudus for next season. You know what I'm saying? Let me just look for that little chart. If I can find it, I don't think I'll be able to. Oh. And there I go, missing my mouth. Oh my gosh. Tap the like if you saw that. Tap the like if you saw that. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to find it. But it basically just showed like Arsenal have spent like nothing on the attack and so many other teams have spent so much more. Like it was egregious. And I'm just like, there's just no surprise. Like it's not surprising where we are right now because we're not making it easier on ourselves. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think I can find it. Nostradamus says, let's guess how much we get for Fabio Vieira in the summer. I mean, honestly, like, I feel like they'll buy him back from us, but for less. I feel like they'll buy him from us for like 20 million or something like that back to Porto because he's doing well there. And that's probably just he needs to be playing consistently in a league that suits him a little bit more and a team that suits him a little bit more. And so 20 million from him, I'm taking it and just moving on. They're not going to give all the money back, because yeah. So yeah, I'm sure that we'll sell him for sure. Johnny Donuts says Matoma, Sane, or Kudus. If we could get any one of those guys in Jan, I would be happy. Thoughts? I mean, not Sane. I just feel like Zane would be another Sterling kind of guy. Jolted from Man City, slower than he's been before. No more the speed that we knew him to have when he was in the Prem. Just gone. Very injury prone kind of guy. He's not somebody that I would want to bring in high wages as well. But Kudus or Matoma, I would go for. I would like. The problem is both clubs are incredibly difficult to deal with, and Brighton are bastards. So I don't even know if we can get anybody from them anymore. I don't know if we're banned or whatever from what we did last summer with our last January with Caicedo. I think people forgot that, but they were not happy with us because we disrupted him and disrupted their whole shit to the point where they kept him from going to training because he wanted to leave and go to Arsenal so bad. It's a bit Chelsea, but if we try to do that again, I don't know how they would feel about it, especially because they probably do feel like, they're within a striking distance of the European spots. They're in 10th, but, they're only like 3 points behind 2-3 points behind the European spot. So, I wouldn't probably, I like Matoma. I would take him in a second, but Brighton going there again after what happened with Caicedo. Yeah, and I hated that, by the way. The whole Caicedo thing, disrupting him and not taking no for an answer, and not being willing to really spend over the odds for Caicedo, but coming with less than what they would even. I thought that was embarrassing, because if you're going to try to take a player mid-season that they don't really want to sell, and they're telling you not to put in more bids or not to try to put in more bids, you have to come in with like a nasty amount of money that they cannot turn down. We were coming with like nonsense numbers because we felt like Edu felt like we had disrupted him so much that they would just take whatever. And it was just like that amateurish, like embarrassing things that we did that just gave me the ick. Like, don't do that again. If you're going to try to disrupt somebody and take them at the end of a window, like we try to do with Douglas Luiz, or like we try to do with Caicedo, you have to offer them something that they cannot refuse, that they would be stupid to refuse. But we come in with lower than what they're willing to take, and it is embarrassing. Don't ever do that again. Sai says Matoma fee would rival Kudus. I'd prefer Kudus. Amina says Rafinha would have been great for us. Yep, he would have. Boy says if Arsenal do make signings, it will be Kubo, Jonathan David, or Reyna. If you're talking about Gio Reyna, it cannot be. Gio Reyna is brittle as a Ritz cracker. I would be so upset if we got Gio Reyna. Can't stand Jonathan David. I know you think he's good. Kubo, we could probably get him from Sociedad. Travis says exactly, bad business. I hate that we never find the gems in the market. So yeah. Amina says when Rafinha was at Leeds, we should have went in for him, but it was unfortunate. He wanted to go to. We waited until Barcelona got really interested in him to try to get him. It was we wanted him bad. He would have been perfect for us, but he's never going to leave Barcelona. You know how they get there, and even if the club wants them to go, they hold on, white knuckle. They're like, "Oh, you have to kill me to get me out of here." Rafinha is obviously started off playing off really well for them so far this season, has been captaining the team. He is almost definitely out of our league now. Like, we can't get him. And the funny thing is that I can see Arsenal fake trying to get him and then not getting him and then being like, oh, well, he was our number one target. Stop going after people that aren't available. Conrad, thank you so much for your super chat, says inexperienced manager and director of football wasted a lot of money squad building and selling players in the last 5 years. It has caught up with us. And I think, and I agree that there's a lot of, because there's so much inexperience and so much amateur shit going on that it's out of the realm of it's not out of the realm of possibility that they were making mistakes. I think there are a lot of Arsenal fans that rationalize every single thing that we do and try to make it seem like everything was perfect. But we know it wasn't. But we also know that everything was not bad. And that's why when we have these conversations, so difficult, because there's often no nuance. And when I say that we've made mistakes, I'm not saying every single player that we've bought has been a mistake. Obviously, I don't feel that way. I think Odegaard's a fabulous signing. I think Gabriel was a great signing. I think Ben White has been a really good signing. Even like overpaying for Ben White was a good overpay, because he was basically played almost every minute of every game for 3 seasons, and he broke down now, but no one was really like hating. Ben White was always like damn near first name on the team sheet. That's a fantastic signing. So we've made good signings. So not everything is bad, but let's be real. Like, we've had a lot of misses as well, especially in the goalkeeper department. The amount of money that's been wasted there, the amount of money that's been wasted at left back as well, just trying to do things that don't make sense, or buying injury prone players or whatever. And just the fact that none of those funds have been used to revitalize the attack, and the lack of being able to sell. There has been some amateurish things going on. And, after the season that Arteta had in that first season, I think that the club, the first season that we challenged, the club really wanted to back him, because they felt like he had shown, because I think he had at that stage, Arteta had pretty much gotten 99% of what he could have gotten out of that particular team. The bench was not great. We had lost one of our best players. It was hard to deal with that, especially first title race ever. But the level that Martinelli and Odegaard and Saka and Jesus were playing at, which at the beginning of that season, they had like 20 like chances created each, like that kind of nonsense. That was like that was so good that I know that they wanted to back him because they're like, we do have the guy, but they went too far. Then they got wrapped up in his, football fantasies of bringing in, freaking Havertz instead of just bringing in the players that they knew we should have brought in. After you lose Xhaka, the assignment is very simple. Bring in somebody that's better than him, or at least offers similar things to him, and they didn't do it. And that has kind of set us backwards since then, because I just feel like they almost got excited and they're like, yeah, this guy is the guy, so let's back him with what he wants. But they still needed to handle him with they still needed to be a grown-up in the room. But again, there's been a lot of good things. I don't want to say that there's been a lot of like everything has been bad. It hasn't been. We have some really talented players in the team, but there's clear gaps that have been there for a while, and we've pretty much been going backwards for the last 2 seasons. So yeah, thank you so much for your super chat. Travis says, I thought being back in the Champions League would unlock our budget. I mean, nothing unlocks the budget here. They put a lot of money forward at the beginning through loans and things like that, not their own money. And now, they're in a position where probably we're on the line with FFP and we need to sell, but equally we've wasted money. So it's like, we can't move forward, but we're almost like caught, it's like you're almost like in like a web, of your own making. You tied those knots around yourself by when you had the money, not spending it smartly. Now you need to spend more, but there's something obstructing you from being able to do it because you haven't been good at selling either. So Blaze says, if Arsenal will try to buy a Rashford in January, that we need to question Arteta. I mean, it's like the most obvious thing. It's the most obvious thing. We get Rashford, and then United use that money to go get Osimhen. And then we end up having to rehabilitate another player on very high wages. I probably would spit up blood, but it's just so obvious because he's out of favor, already in the Prem, plays in one of the positions that we need to improve upon. It's not looking good, but yeah. Oof. Just thinking about it makes me sick. John says, Jess, I like what you said earlier. We don't know if we would actually in this position because we did not go out and get the pieces we needed. At least if we had done, we say, okay, Liverpool, fair play. And that's the thing is, I don't know if Liverpool are actually this much better than us. That's, like if, you know what I mean? Like if we could not have just done a little bit more, are we 6 points, in a game in hand? Like, let's just give them, let's say because we know they'll probably be Everton, 9 points behind Liverpool bad. Like, no, I don't think we are, but maybe we are because we just don't have those pieces. But yeah, if we had, let's just say, just to play the game, if we had Isak in the team, no offense, Foxy, I'm just using him as an example, but if we had Isak, Nico Williams in the team, at the very least, and we were 9 points behind, I'd be like, well, we're just not as good. Liverpool are just fucking like amazing. But I feel like in my soul, if we had those types of players in our team, that we're not losing to Everton or drawing to Everton at home, we're not drawing to Fulham away from home. Those 4 points put us 2 points behind them. So, I just, if those chances against Brighton at home fall to Isak instead of Havertz, we win. We beat Brighton at home, even with 10 men. That's 2 more points that we just threw away, So I just, it's always the what if. And I just want us to just do everything that we can and then see where the chips lie. Liverpool are just better, then they're just better. But yeah, this is just not enough. Chosen One says, Jess, could Arsenal buy Xavi Simons if both PSG and Leipzig agreed? They probably won't in January, but I'm curious. I think I saw that Bayern really want him, and I have a feeling that PSG will allow him to go to Bayern. I don't think Leipzig will be able to keep him. But, us getting him, I just feel like we had a chance and we didn't go after him, so I'm not sure, what's the tea with that. But Xavi Simons is a good player, but I still think that we can, if we're gonna buy like a versatile player. See, I like Xavi Simons and I want another attacking midfielder, but as good as he is, I'm not sure that he really solves the problems that we have. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about him. There's always like a little bit of a question. Would I take him? Yes, like, because I think he's talented. But like, if I had to choose between spending 80 million on him, which is what he'd cost, and 80 million on Kudus, I'd probably still go for Kudus because he has those things from in the Premier League that really matter: that ball carrying, the strength, the physicality, the goal score. Like Xavi Simons has a goal scoring too, and the versatility. I feel like that'd be a better buy for us, but I have a feeling Xavi Simons is going to go to Bayern. I think he'll go Bayern unless they can get Wirtz, but they maybe get both of them anyway. So I don't know. But Xavi Simons would be somewhere on the list, but lower, if that makes sense. Something about him makes me think that he's not quite the right fit, but would he add some quality to the team? Yeah, of course. Nostradamus says Marmoush is such an Arteta signing. That's somebody that Arsenal should probably be looking at. Because he strikes me as somebody that hits the ground running because he's a grown up. He's not a kid. Hits the ground running. Good stats. Looks the part. Can play striker. Can also play left wing. Would add quality to the team. We're Frankfurt in the standings. They're third. No way. With top 4 on the line. No, we can't get him. End of the season though, probably look at him. F says, if we get Rashford end the season, Dave, between Sterling or Rashford, I'm taking Sterling all day, who not even Arteta rates apparently. Here's my thing about Rashford is I actually don't question his talent. I actually really rate him in terms of the talent that he has. When I say he's similar to Martinelli, I'm saying similar in the types of positions that they want to take up and the type of forward that they are. They're inside forwards. They're not really touchline wingers, but make no mistake about it, Rashford is way more talented than Martinelli. He has the ability to create something out of nothing. He's a good ball striker. He's quick. He has skills. He could do all those things. My problem with Marcus Rashford is he does not fit the culture at Arsenal. And Arteta is culture first, everything else second. And I just fear that his party lifestyle, that type of thing, is not going to mesh with the group. And if you've seen the way Aubameyang went down, I don't think that this is going to be the right fit for us. And we'll end up being something where we're trying to offload a player that doesn't fit the culture. But just you watch clips of Rashford just even a couple of weeks ago, he's not a bad player at all. He was scoring goals for Amorim. The problem with Marcus Rashford is his attitude, and that scares me more than anything because Arteta doesn't like players that don't follow. He's not going to look at Rashford as a player that could get you 15 goals a season and try to make it work. He's going to sequester him away from the group. He's going to have him playing with the under 21s. And so he falls in the big category conversation. And I just don't think it's going to work out. So to me, it's not about talent. Marcus Rashford is infinitely talented. I him and Sancho, to me, are the same. They are really talented with bad attitudes. They don't want to work hard. They have superstar mentalities. They've been told since they were young that they're the best thing since sliced bread, and they act like it. But it's not a talent thing with the two of them. They like to party and shit, so, and that's not, Arteta has these players getting married every other day and having babies. Rashford's not doing that shit. He's dating Love Island models. Like, he's not doing that, so it's more that than anything. I don't think Rashford's a bad player. I just know how that's going to end. I just know how that's going to end. Um, um, Nostradamus says, oh yeah, in the summer, ideally Openda, but for January, Jonathan David is a no-brainer. I hate those names. I really don't like those players, but I get it. Wake Up Mind says, doesn't defend or track back. Here's the thing, though. Let's think about the tracking back thing. Don't we want our forwards not to track back as much and play as much defense? Because I think we've also been Arteta a little bit. That there are people in this fan base that are upset that Martinelli has to track back. Because, there's a quote that went around a couple years ago that Martinelli got snatched out of a game because he didn't track back, and Albert Stuyvenberg, or whatever his name is, said, yeah, you scored the goal, but you didn't track your marker. And, Martinelli has been taken out of games before for not tracking back. And we've spoken about, SAKA having to do fullback shifts. So my issue with him is not really tracking back. I actually think we can stand to let our forwards stay up a little bit longer and not have to do as much defensive work. Do I want him walking around? No, but I think a happy Rashford doesn't walk around. I think an unhappy Rashford does. So I'm not sure if I really care about the tracking back thing as much. I think a player that could potentially get you, I'll look at his stats right now, because I know he scored like a shit ton of goals. And in big games too. Like, Rashford's not even like just like a stat patter against like lower level teams. Like, he scores big goals against big teams too. But like a player that could potentially get you, let's call like 15 goals off of the wing, that player you probably don't want doing fullback shifts, but I get that a lot of us have bought into this idea that all of our players need to be willing to like track back and do all this kind of shit. And I'm like, okay, cool. But for me, it's just all about the attitude. It's all about that. I'd prefer SAKA and Martinelli not doing as much tracking back. I actually really like the fact that Timber allows SAKA not to have to do as much of it. I just don't feel like our forwards need to be wing backs, but it's something that we've complained about, but we don't want to buy players that don't do it. Of course, they don't do it as much because other teams they don't have their forwards do that shit. They don't. So yeah, Nafini says Martinelli is a counterattacking type of winger. Yeah, I feel like he's much better when we're playing more off the cuff, when we're very like playing our orchestrated slow. He's like a non-factor. Wake Up Mind says, and Rashford would get the whole United online fan abuse if he joins Arsenal. Imagine that getting into his head. It is like a non-starter because there's just too much going on. He would have, like you said, I saw a Man United fan saying that his worst nightmare would be Rashford coming to Arsenal, doing well, and winning the league. And the way Chelsea fans were abusing Havertz when they thought that we might win the league last season, it's just not something that a weak kind of mentality type of person would be able to deal with. The fan base that he left, plus us, Man United and Arsenal fan bases are some of the worst in terms of the way that they abuse players. We could never. He needs to go overseas. He needs to go somewhere else. Blaze says, Jess really said Arteta got players who are married and have kids. He's like, everybody in our team is getting married and having kids, and Rashford ain't doing that shit. He's out doing nightlife. Could you imagine him? He's in Manchester doing that shit. What do you think he's going to do in London? So Victor says tracking back and defending being our biggest criteria for forwards is odd to say the least. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't care. Like, I don't care about tracking back and defending as much. I remember early on, I was like thinking that was important because our players were doing that. But in the last 2 seasons, we're so much more defensive than we were back then that I actually don't want it anymore. Like, the obsession with the left back inversion, the obsession with left center mid being a defender, the obsession with our forwards being defenders as well. That stuff is starting to give me the ick. So I'm not concerned about that. I just want my attackers to score goals. I want them to be good. I want them to scare the life out of. Think about how scared we are when we have to play against Rashford. Let's make no bones about it. We're scared. We are fucking scared when we have to play against Rashford. Arteta's scared. He's shitting bricks. So I want a player that strikes that fear in the opposition. Does that need to be Rashford? No, I don't think it'll work culturally. I just think it's a train wreck waiting to happen. But like, it's not talent that Rashford is. Rashford is not lacking talent. That's not it. F says, yeah, Rashford has X factor, probably even more than Saka, to be honest, but that's literally it. Doesn't track back, dumb footballing IQ, and isn't even quick anymore. Even a Wash Sterling is better. I don't think so. I don't think a Wash Sterling is better. I think Rashford is better, but we're talking about two people that we really shouldn't have at this club. So, yeah. So yeah, let's see. F says Saka will probably be the next pop the question. He's got time now after all. Yeah, I mean, don't remind me. When Gabrielle said like we were doing it 27 years old, I'm just like, slow down. Slow down. You were 22 the last time I checked. Now you're 27. That's fucking insane. Slow down. No. No. They need to stop. I still just think that they're children and they're not, so let's slow down. Burmese says the situation will force Arteta to create a new tactical strategy, which may actually be beneficial for the team. As long as he doesn't get scared. That's my thing with Arteta. Don't get scared and clam up more. You need to almost, I think, let them more free. Arteta, like Saka is the only one that can thrive in the stiff system. Everyone else needs fluidity. They need creativity. They need more chances. They need to get closer. They need to feel happy when they attack. They need to feel like they're going to get more than one chance. This is an opportunity for Arteta to double down on giving them more freedom and not go into, well, let me restrict them more because I trust these players less. If he does that, boy, we are in trouble. Travis says nobody scares me like Salah and Jota. Yeah, well, Kevin De Bruyne used to scare me like nobody's business. He used to scare the shit out of me too. But Salah and Mane, that was not fun. I just knew they were going to drop 4 or 5 on our head top. Every single time I was like, I cannot wait for this game to be over. I cannot wait for this game to be over. But yeah, Salah is pretty scary. Jota, he always scores against us. So, yeah. Wake Up Mind says United fan base is worse, to be honest. Chelsea fans just yappers most of the time. Yeah. I think ours is pretty bad, but United is really bad too. Let's see. Boy says Jess, really no one sane is scared of Trashford. I mean, listen, he scored against us almost every single time we played against them. So I think that's revisionism at its best. Like, trust me, even this time before the United game, I remember sitting here before the game telling you guys to calm down. As long as we played our game, we would beat Amorim's United. And there were people in the chat that were still saying, but what about Rashford on the counter? What about Rashford on the counter? We are fundamentally scared of Rashford. Like, maybe you weren't, but he scored against us almost every single time we played. I think at top 6, we might be the team that he scored against the most. Blaze says, yeah, time flies very fast. Only MLS, Wanyeri, and Calafiori are youngest players on our team. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, Saka being an old head in this team is, to those kids, is crazy. Like, he's like 5 years older than him. Slow down. Slow down. They're getting into the 27s now. Like, you were 22 last time I checked. But also, like, Timber is still young. Saliba's still young. So we still have some youngins in the team, but I don't like this. I'm not excited about them getting old. Like, I'm really not. Wake Up Mind says Arteta and the squad can still be really good. It's just the pressure catching up, I guess, with Arteta overthinking now. We lose 1-0 and 2-1s these days being this poor. Yeah, we could still be good. I'm not saying that. Again, I'm not saying that we losing your best player is never easy, especially with the way that we've dealt with it in the past. There's obviously scars there, very like new scars too with the Odegaard situation. And people still go back to Saliba. But there is an opportunity for Arteta to do something different. Trust the squad. Don't get scared. Don't clam up. Play our game, and we're just on the edges of a little bit of form. So don't lose that because you lost Saka. But the club really should, if they really give a fuck about the season, go into the transfer window, genuinely. Because, again, nothing is promised. We may get into a situation where we beat Newcastle and we actually do have an opportunity to win the Carabao Cup. Or maybe we get a good draw in the Champions League. Maybe we get on the good side. Maybe we get on the Dortmund side from last season, and they had an easy run. They were on the good side where all the other good teams were knocking each other out. What if that happens to us? But we're not prepared because we didn't go into the January transfer window. There's still a lot of shit that can happen this season. Maybe we get past United and then we get another easy run like we did in the Carabao Cup. So if they give a fuck about winning trophies, they will still go into that January transfer window and make it shake, because nothing is promised. Somebody said it in the chat. City will rebuild. They are going to go into this next window and be so annoying and buy up all the talent. So we have a bad City. We have a Liverpool that's good, but nothing like the City that we had to go up against the last 2 seasons. We got to try to make it shake. We don't know what it's going to be like next season. So, yeah. A boy says the only thing that can really derail what's left of the season is a Saliba injury. City will be relegated. Travi says that's why we got to start winning shit. Blaze says Saliba, Martinelli, Saka, and Timber will be 24 years old next year. Please slow down. It's just too much for me now. Jordan Hill says, well, Saka has been here since 2018, 2019. He's been here forever. But I still, when I look at him, I'm like, he's 18. Like, what do you mean? King says, I can tell you that getting Rashford is like jumping. This is about to be so dramatic. I can already tell. I can tell you that getting Rashford is like jumping in an abyss. He will score 40 goals in all comps after getting a new London girl for you. Then next season, when he gets dumped, he turns for the next 4 years. So funny. I actually like that. That's funny. Mosquito says, hi, Jess. This year, we have been very unlucky with injuries. Just now that we have found Jesus, we have lost Saka. I think that in January, we have to sign at least 2 players in attack. We needed to sign 2 players in attack for 2 summers now. So I agree. We need to sign at least 2 players in attack. But it's not because we lost Saka. We've needed that shit. We've needed that shit for so long. So we do, but do you think that Arsenal are going to do it? Probably not. Boy says, you see how quick these players are growing up? That's why I tell people that experiencing is a myth. Fuck experience. Young players will gain experience. Blaze says the reason pressure catching us because we ended up trophyless in the last 2 seasons. I mean, we've been trophyless for the last 4 seasons. So it's not even just, you can't hear me? You guys can't hear me? Blaze says he can't hear me. Let me know if you guys can hear me or not. Can you guys hear me? We should be back now. Back now. Yeah, I pressed that button and it was blinking. Now you guys can hear me. You guys are lagging, but I know you guys can hear me now. Back now. Exactly. Yeah, you guys hear me now. Remy says the fan base should rise up if the squad isn't replenished starting in January and continuing in the summer. For the past couple of seasons, other than Rice, no marquee signings have been made. Yeah, I really do think that we need to expect more. I think we should want shouldn't realize how big of a club Arsenal is. Like, Arsenal is not just a top 4 team. That's what we become, but that's not who we're meant to be. And so we are really far still away from what we're meant to be. So I do think that we have lowered the standards, and I'm not trying to be high standards FC, but I do think we've lowered the standards to, well, we're challenging City and blah, blah, blah. We need to, I mean, if Arsene Wenger had waited until Sir Alex Ferguson left to try to challenge him and win titles, he would have ran straight into Jose Mourinho and not won anything past then, because that's kind of how it works. There's one person that's in your way. You have to beat them to, to actually win. You can't they're just not going to hand it to you. You need to beat them. And so, we're not going to just get a free ride where it's just us for 10 years and no one else is challenging. And so this waiting doesn't make any sense. You need to take what you can possibly get. Chelsea frauded their way to a Champions League in 2021. They were not a good side. They were imbalanced. They had a manager that they weren't quite sure about, because really they didn't become sure about Tuchel until he won that Champions League. There was always questions around him. Jorginho and Havertz won a Champions League, so in a team that wasn't the best team in that season. They weren't. They came in like third in the Premier League and won a Champions League, but they weren't waiting around to get some perfect scenario to win it. They just won games and got to it. I really do think that we're thinking too much. Like, stop thinking, just do, and we should expect more. As fans, you should expect them to go into January window and make it shake. They may or may not, but we shouldn't rationalize it every single time as, yeah, but there was no players. There's always talent. There's always talent. The better your sporting director is, by the way, the more likely you are to find that talent. The more likely you are to identify that talent and not have to pick or guess. You don't have to just buy cast-offs from the Premier League. You can identify talent outside of this league and figure out whether or not they'd adapt quickly, but we don't have that. So we should expect to have a top sporting director. We should expect to go into the January transfer window and get somebody. We should expect the club to act, but we don't expect that because we've been fed this whole, yeah, but the perfect signing. You don't need the perfect signing to get better. You don't. You just need more talent. So, and getting perfect signings hasn't given us anything but 4 trophyless seasons. So I think we should expect more as a fan base. That doesn't mean that you have to be toxic or anything like that. You don't have to be in the players' mentions, calling them and get out of my club. You don't have to disrespect the manager all the time. You don't have to do, but as a fan base, I do feel like our expectations are very low. And that makes the club feel more comfortable doing what they're doing. And I don't feel like they should not be comfortable. They should be like, these fans are this close to stop coming to the games, because when I'm seeing empty stadiums and we're starting to see less people are going. Yeah. Boy says, kind of need perfect signings at Arsenal because we don't move fast enough in the market. Yo-Yo says, those of us who didn't want Arteta and have consistently demanded more from him do know how great this club is. KSC, as of yet, have never significantly contributed to Arsenal being a Super League club. What is this? Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. Yo-Yo's always been consistent. I think Yo-Yo's been on my in the chat, a part of this community since the very beginning when I had like no subs. So, and I remember you've always been very consistent about Arteta, so and that we deserve more and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't think we've done quite enough. I think, we've done, if I had to give a grade for these 5 years, I would probably give it like a B- C+, because I feel like it's just an okay job. Like, to me, it can't be a good job unless we're winning trophies, so I feel like I would be disingenuous saying that 5 years in. But has it been all bad? No. Is it enough? No. Steve says Jesus gets back in form. SAKA is injured. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of how it is, with us. We'll always get one and lose one, and that's the game. That's the game, especially with all these injuries. It's always going to be someone in, someone out, and I think anybody that thinks it's not going to be like that is in for a rude awakening, because we're always going to have players out. There's just too many games, too many international breaks. Yeah, I know we're going to have players out all the time, but I still expect us to win our games because everybody else is. Liverpool are getting kind of like more breaks, I feel like, with their injuries, but not as bad as us. But yeah, listen, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. We'll see how Arteta and Arsenal deal with these injuries, and if we go into the market or not. I'm sure once January 1st comes around, everybody's going to be, who we're going to get, who we linked with, blah, blah, blah. My gut is telling me nothing will happen, but hopefully something does, and it's a good thing. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Arteta maneuvers around this, and if he's going to get more conservative and, restrict the players more because he doesn't trust them, or if he's going to let it flow so that they can have more chances and get more confident. So we'll see how it goes. I will not be on for the next 2 days because obviously holiday and all that kind of stuff. But happy holidays to all of you guys. Merry Christmas if you celebrate that. This has been an amazing, I love this channel so much, and we have so much fun, and whether we're winning or losing. So I'm hoping that you guys have a happy and healthy holidays, and obviously I'll see you guys on Boxing Day. So yeah, unless something crazy happens, you will not see me. So see you guys on Boxing Day. Like and subscribe on your way out, and I love y'all, and talk to you soon. Bye, guys.